hanging out in the Woody and Jim Show studio with Halsey.
Oh, yeah.
Girl, it's so exciting to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Graveyard came out several hours ago. Everybody's freaking out. And, you're in Nashville, which is like a songwriter's hub. So naturally, I want to talk about the lyrics and really get into it instead of just be like, oh, it's great, whatever.
Yeah.
So one of the lyrics that I feel like people have already really latched onto, it's funny how the warning signs can feel like they're butterflies.
Yeah.
So I feel like I want to dissect that a little bit.
Sure.
Naturally, whenever you write a song, it typically comes from a personal place because there's nothing that you know better than yourself.
Yeah.
So, what was your state of mind when you're writing about that kind of an experience?
So the bridge for Graveyard is actually, it was kind of like, I don't even know where it came from. It was like a on the fly kind of thing.
Yeah.
I had already, recorded most of the song. I was in the studio finishing up the vocals, and I didn't have a bridge for the song, and I was in the booth, and I was doing a take like all the way through of the song, and I got to the part where I had no bridge, and I sang that lyric. I sang it's funny how the warning signs can feel like they're butterflies, and then did the and I don't even know why I did it. It was such a weird thing, but just felt like I was getting everything out, kind of. It was very instinctual. And everyone in the room, we were all just kind of like, that's it. That's totally it. And it comes from a conversation I had with my mom a while ago, actually, where, we were talking about relationships and talking about, how you can think you know someone so well, and then by the end of it be like, how did I not notice all these red flags in the beginning? Or like, how didn't I see this person for who they are? And it doesn't even have to necessarily be about, a boyfriend or a girlfriend. It could be about like a friend or just like anyone, you know what I mean? Like that you get really close with and you trust. And she said something really interesting to me. She was like, you should always go for the person. She was like, never go for the person who gives you butterflies.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, that's your body's way of telling you that something is wrong. She's like, you're not supposed to feel anxious and nervous and scared when you fall in love. You're supposed to feel safe. She's like, go for the person who makes you feel calm. She's like, if your heart leaps every time they text you, every time they compliment you, every time they come around, that's not a good sign. Like, obviously feel excited and be,
Sure, but it's so interesting because
but
it's like totally counterintuitive to everything that we sort of grow up to believe.
Yeah, but I think, when you do get anxious in that way, a lot of relationships that, start out where you get that fluttery feeling, you can become kind of addicted in a way to someone's affection, where when they come around and when they compliment you and when things are good and you get that rush in your chest, you become addicted to that feeling so you can ignore the bad sometimes in a quest for those moments where everything feels good.
Right.
Because you're just addicted to that feeling of them making you feel good again, and that's when you can ignore the bad, and that's a lot of what the song is about. It's funny because the song is called Graveyard, and it's obviously a very not scary or dark sounding song. It's like pretty like bouncy and upbeat, despite the lyric being a little bit darker. And in some ways it's a metaphor, and in some ways it's kind of literal, where it's like you can love someone and trust them so much that you might find yourself putting yourself in situations that are harmful to you, because you love them. You would follow them anywhere blindly.
Right.
And it's about loving yourself enough to know when to stop and when to say, I can't follow you anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and pivoting from that a little bit, just to talk to you about Nightmare, because I know that song meant so much to so many women like myself who consider themselves feminists.
Thank you.
Just having that as sort of like, I'm sorry, it kind of makes me a little emotional because it's like you were saying all of those things that we all feel, but feel like terrified to ever say.
Yeah.
I feel like, especially when we're sort of living in a man's world and it's like every single second you have to be careful about, make sure you smile or you're protecting everyone's ego. Don't say what you really think, because if you show that you have any emotion at all, then all of a sudden you're hysterical or you can't be taken seriously or things like that. So I want to say thank you for being that voice. And I know, your lyrics are showing up at women's marches and rallies. How does that feel for you?
I mean, it's obviously, it can be a tough thing because, when I made Nightmare, I obviously had a lot I wanted to get off my chest, and I felt a responsibility and kind of like an agency at the time where I was like, okay, I can make a record that's political in this way. And, you know, I've put myself on the line for long enough that it feels justified, you know what I mean? With like the marches and, you know, with a lot of my work with reproductive health, with charity, with activism, with whatever it may be, that where it's like, okay, I can say this now because I've put my money where my mouth is. Now I need to put my mouth where my money is. You know what I mean? Like I can donate all I want, but if I'm not speaking and putting it in my music and using my platform, then it's kind of just this like, you know, this activism that's separate from, you know, who I am. And that's not how I want it to be. It's all, you know, it's two sides of the same coin. And, you know, but it was really hard because I think when I was making Nightmare, I was like, this is how the whole album's going to be. I'm going to make an angry, like, protest album. But once I did Nightmare and I had gone around yelling, I felt empowered, but I also realized that I felt better.
Yeah.
So there wasn't more, I didn't have more to vent. Mm-hmm. It actually was so amazing because after I made Nightmare, it helped me get back in the studio and make songs that felt more calm and more composed because I wasn't holding on to all that angst anymore because I'd kind of gotten it out.
Right.
It's funny that you use the word hysterical or like hysterical before when you say like if we show any emotion, people think we're hysterical. A lot of people don't know this, but the prefix hyst, Hyst, is a derivative of the word for uterus.
Right.
So when someone gets a hysterectomy,
that's
you know,
why,
having their uterus removed. And so the word hysteria is derived from the belief that, you know, women were experiencing this like clinical, like emotional overload.
No, people were like committed. Women were committed back in the day over that. Yeah.
So, you know, for the word hysteria, which obviously means like total chaos and like uncontrolled emotion and like just, you know, it's funny that it's derivative of a word that is so inherently female, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it's not female, just, you know, just uterus having whatever, just historically speaking. And, you know, so it's interesting you use the word hysterical because that always kind of makes me laugh in a way because it's like, God forbid you do have any kind of like opinion or an emotion or whatever it may be. And like, I think that's why I had to make Nightmare so angry that it wasn't like people would be like, oh my God, like she's being so dramatic. And I was like, yeah, I am. That's the point. You know what I mean? Like I had to make it so angry that like, it was just like, almost like it was hyperbolized because it needed to be, you know, so no one could be like, she's making such a big deal out of this. I'm like, yeah, I am. I'm making a really 100%, big deal out of it.
No questions asked. Well, I also saw you were having a conversation with someone about the song, and you had talked about how just as much as it was supposed to be like an anthem for people who already consider themselves feminist, it was equally important for like people who had something to learn about misogyny and sexism. Do you feel like that worked?
I do, yeah. I do. I feel like everything I do, like little step by step, if I can turn one person or change someone's mind, you know, like for that conversation in particular, we were talking about doing television performances of Nightmare, and it was like, ooh, like, should we hold back? Like, what if it's too sexy? What if it's too, you know, aggressive? What if it's too this? And it's like, you know, and it's like, well, everyone was like, the people who get it will get it. And I'm like, it's not them I'm worried about. Right. It's the people who don't that need this more. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when I did my Women's March speech 2 years ago, that was the most surprising thing for me. Was it wasn't the people who reached out and were like, I have the same story. You know, that was obviously really like, it was compelling and it was heartwarming and it made me feel less alone and, you know, it really helped. But it was the people who said, wow, I never thought of it that way. Mm-hmm. Those were the people whose opinions had the most impact on me because it was the fathers or, you know, the brothers or the boyfriends or whoever who were going, hey, like you said some of this that happened to you in like 2002. You were like 8 then. And I went, yeah. Yeah. And it was the people who went home then and sat down at the dinner table with their daughters and said, hey, do you have anything to tell me? Right. Are you okay? Yeah. Because it never occurred to them that they should ask or that they should pay attention.
So interesting, too, is that like what you just explained is, you know, you're sort of presenting this idea that, hey, just because I'm angry about something doesn't mean that I'm not willing to talk to you about it. Or even like extend some kind of forgiveness or compassion for maybe why you didn't know better about this sort of thing. And I feel like as we sort of live in, you know, Twitter cancel culture, that people are scared to ever admit that they can see someone else's point of view because they don't want to be I don't know, implicated in this thing of like, well, if I make a mistake once and there's never any forgiveness. Like, I feel like the way that you're approaching it kind of comes from this place of like educate, forgive, move forward as better people, like growth. Yeah. Which is super important. I feel like something that we don't have a lot of right now, something we desperately need more of.
I agree. I mean, I'm a person who ended up with a huge platform on the internet when I was a teenager. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like, I'm really fortunate that I grew up in a household that was really diverse and was really, you know, my parents really educated me. And like, you know, I feel lucky that for the most part, there wasn't a whole lot of like, you know, internalized intolerance that I had to grow out of. For the most part, most of my life was like, you know, in a very like accepting and educated household. Right. But for the few things that I did have to grow out of, or I did have to learn or understand once I left New Jersey, where nothing is ever happening ever, you know what I mean? And like saw the rest of the world and understood how nuanced a lot of these experiences are, you know, coming into my own sexuality and realizing like, oh, the LGBTQ community isn't just one thing. All of those are individual experiences, and within those subsects are individual experiences. Like race isn't just black and white, and like faith isn't just yes or no, and like learning the nuances of all these experiences. But I think the most important thing is just like, just listen. Just before you open your mouth, because I feel like sometimes when people have the conversation about, you know, things, be them political or, you know, about humanities, about whatever, the other person's talking and they're already preparing their defense in their head. Yeah. They're not listening to a word the other person's saying because they're already trying to figure out what their next thing they're going to say is going to be. Right. You're not listening because you're just thinking about what your next thing to say is going to be. And that's the hardest part, is like, just stop for a second and just actually listen to what the other person is saying. Ultimately is like, I think the best way, because the thing is hate comes from fear. Right. And fear just comes from a lack of understanding of something. We fear the things we don't understand, and we hate the things that we fear. And so it's like having these conversations is the only way that we're going to be able to, like, you know, resolve, I think, you know, some of that. I also, what the hell do I know? I'm 24, so like, you know, I'm just doing my best.
But you have a birthday coming up.
Yeah, we don't gotta talk about it. It's okay. Like, it's fine.
I mentioned, like, you're a Libra, right?
Sure am.
I saw that you were into like the Pattern app. What do you think is going on with that? Because when I downloaded it for myself, I was very like, is someone listening to me as I talk? Like, did you feel like you got your mail read?
Some of the things I read in there, I was like, okay, fine.
Attacked.
I guess I am like that. Whatever. Yeah, some of it was really, really scarily dead on. I don't really know if I understand completely why, you know, astrology is the way that it is, but it just keeps like rearing its head in like bizarrely accurate ways. So I'm kind of just submitting to the process and being like, yeah, that's true. That's definitely me.
Can we talk about the album a little bit?
Yeah, of course.
So first of all, these letters that fans have been getting, it says, hi, my name is Ashley. It's nice to meet you. Seems like the letters MANIC are standing out more than others. Like, is that exactly what we think it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the album is called Manic.
Okay.
This is probably the first time I'm actually ever saying that, like, for real.
Wow.
Like, ever out of my mouth. So that's really cool. Yeah, the album is called Manic. And the reason that I decided to call it that is because part of it was this reclamation, in a way. You know, manic is like a word that people have kind of weaponized against me at some points in my life. I'm really open about having bipolar disorder. I've had it since I was, you know, well, I mean, I guess forever, but I got diagnosed when I was 17. And a lot of times, you know, I've had a hard time expressing myself creatively or growing or making mistakes or learning because there's kind of this, it's like objective perspective where the people around me sometimes would be like, are you being manic? You seem like you're being very manic. And it's like, no, I'm just like, I don't know, being a person. Like, you know what I mean? Like changing my mind and growing and like having ideas and like all of these things. So it's kind of like I felt like I couldn't fully be myself all the time because I was scared people were going to think that I was like, you know, acting up or like something was wrong. And that's a largely part of the reason why I've made concept albums for the majority of my career is because I could say something and didn't have to be necessarily my own experience. I could get away with saying something was like a hyperbolized version of my own experience, like a cinematic version, whatever, with, you know, without having to really admit like, yeah, this is how it's going on in my head. Yeah. You know, I could be like, this is just like, you know, what it would be like if it were a movie. Right. Without saying, you know, this is actually how I'm experiencing it. Like, you know, the record is a lot different than I thought it was going to be, and it's really personal.
Okay.
It's really conversational. I've only played it for a couple people so far, but I played it for my mom and I played it for my brother, and they're really cool. They love my music and they're really supportive. And they both started crying when they heard it. And I said to them, I was like, why are you guys crying? Like, whoa, I don't really feel like it's that sad. Like,
Yeah.
And they looked at me and they were both like, you sound like Ashley.
Mm.
And so that was a really big moment for me. So I was kind of like, which meant I accomplished what I set out to do, which was give my fans a more, direct kind of communication with me, where I feel like I'm sitting them down and I'm talking to them, face to face. I've been so fortunate, that I've toured arenas and I've done, all these amazing things. And like the one thing I think that's pretty consistent for me with my career and why I love doing this is because no matter what, it always just feels like it's me and them in a living room.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I can feel like 20,000 people is 20, and I'm just talking to them face to face. Like I always swear that even if there's 15,000 people in the room, I'll still try to look everybody in the eyes at least once. You know what I mean? Which is probably statistically impossible, but like, I still say that I do it because I do try. And so this album feels a little bit more like that. And I think it's also because, I am going to be 25, and I feel like I've reached a point where I can say this is who I am. I feel like it would have been dishonest for me or irresponsible for me before this to say this is who I am, because I was still changing so much,
Yeah.
And I mean, in my fourth album, I'll probably come back in here and be like, that was wrong. This is who I am now. But,
We've got to give ourselves permission to evolve just as we get older and just as our experiences change. But I do definitely want to talk to you about something that means a lot to everyone here at the River, which is mental health awareness and suicide prevention.
Mm-hmm.
We have an annual benefit show every single year where we really try to bring awareness to the fact that, like, statistically, I think young people between the ages of 10 and 24, like, it's one of the leading causes of death. And it's something we don't talk about enough. So, coming from that place of wanting people to feel connected to you and like you're being honest with them, what would you say to anyone who might be listening to this right now that's a fan of yours that finds themselves having thoughts about self-harm or shame about maybe how they're feeling mentally?
The thing with shame is it's the loneliest emotion in the world. You feel like you're the only person who is experiencing what you're experiencing. It wasn't until I think pretty recently, having more open conversations with my friends as it's getting like, a little bit more socially acceptable to talk about these things is realizing like mental illness obviously affects a percentage of people, but mental health is something that everybody needs to work on and needs to focus on as much as physical health.
Right.
If maybe more, honestly. I think people think that mental health treatment or mental health care is reserved for people who have mental illnesses, and that's not always the case. I always kind of described it as like a check engine light, like knowing when to be like, I think something might be wrong with me right now. I don't feel like myself or whatever, so I'm going to say something to the people close to me before it starts to get worse, I think having conversations is really important. I think being able to document what's happening to you, like journaling has always been really helpful for me, so I can find patterns in some things. The thing about right now is that we live in a world where everybody just wants to show off the best parts of their life. Everything's a highlight reel, with social media and, just having the ability to see inside everybody's life all the time and to think, I must be the only one who doesn't feel like everything's perfect because everybody else looks like everything's perfect. I think it's acknowledging that more likely than not, everyone around you is like going through the same things at some point. And if you heard your friend was suffering, you would want to help them, and your friends will want to do the same for you. It's just really important to talk about it. And like I said, ultimately just to remind yourself, if you can, that you are not the only person feeling what you're feeling, even though it feels like it sometimes. And sometimes it feels better to feel like it. You know, feel like, oh gosh, like no one could ever possibly be going through the pain that I'm going through.
Yeah.
But, you know, knowing that it's a community and the people around you, they want to help you. And they'll ask for your help when they need it too, you know, if you open that conversation, and it feels really good helping other people with the same thing. I think that it's deeper than casual conversations, though. I think obviously we need to make like really serious changes in the way that we treat and acknowledge mental health in this country. I went far too long in my life thinking that something was wrong with me instead of knowing that something was different about me. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it took me until probably pretty recently to know that having bipolar disorder just meant that I was wired differently than other people, which meant I needed different things than them. And, you know, I had to balance my scales in different ways, and I, you know, just had to treat things differently. Like, it didn't mean something was wrong with me.
Right.
You know, it's like, this is a stupid comparison, but like I wouldn't tell someone who's lactose intolerant something's wrong with them. I'd just be like, you can't have dairy. Like, that's it. Like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wouldn't be like, something's wrong with you. It's like having bipolar disorder is the same way. The stakes are just a lot higher.
Right.
So I need to make sure that I pay attention and I help myself. And I think it's the same for everybody dealing with mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have one more question for you. I know you're really busy. You've got to get out of here soon. My question is, you know, in a time where things are really stressful, the state of the world, it's like every day we have something we're looking at, like what is going on, news fatigue, etc. What's making you happy?
Personally, like in my own life, what's making me happy? I have a new house. I love my new house.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Yeah, I've moved out my whole life.
Yeah.
Like since I was a little kid, my parents moved a lot. I don't think I've ever lived somewhere for more than like 3 years. Most of my friends had like childhood homes they spent their whole life in. So until I was a teenager, my parents moved like every like 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And I've obviously been living out of hotel rooms for like 4. And I just got this house that I really love and I really feel at home in. And it's probably the first time in my life that I can really say like I feel like I have a home.
Yeah.
Which is a really nice feeling. So I just spend as much time there as I can. Obviously, you know, finishing the album made me really, really happy. I love Euphoria. It's like my favorite thing ever.
So good. And Zendaya is the queen of my life.
I agree. I'm a child of like the Degrassi Skins generation.
Yeah.
So like any coming of age, like young people show, I'm like, yes, give me more. I'm super about it. I think music is shifting into a really cool place, which makes me really happy and makes me really excited. You know, I'm trying to stay positive. I know news fatigue is real. I know eco-anxiety is real. I know it can be really hard to wake up every day and find like things to be happy about. But, you know, I think that, you know, collectively, the more positive energy we're putting into the world, you know, the more likely things are to shift in a positive direction as a result. So,
Absolutely.
you know.
Well, thank you so much for coming and being with us. We're going to see you again really soon at our iHeartRadio Music Festival. We're really excited. So, Halsey, thank you so much.
Thank you.